Hello everybody, I am Peppino here, back playing Kerbal Space Program. And last episode, we made preparations for our first manned mission to Duna and back. And so that is what we are doing today. We are in the Star Blazer, and we are currently making our burn to escape Kerbin's sphere of influence. And as you can see, we had to go around Kerbin multiple times to do this because the nuclear engine we are using is very fuel efficient, but not very powerful, especially for a large craft like this. So we had to make 2 or 3 passes around Kerbin, burning each time, to eventually work our way up to escape velocity. But we did it. So, here we are now, just making our burn to get a good Duna encounter, and as you can see there, we've got the Duna encounter after what was actually a very, very long burn with this nuclear engine. It was like 10-minute burn, 10-15 minute burn time for me, cut down to just a couple minutes, and so the crew decides, hey, why not? Let's all go on EVA and take one last good look at Kerbin before they leave the sphere of influence, becoming the first Kerbals ever to do so. And here we see that moment when they have just now left Kerbin's sphere of influence for the first time ever. You see Colin Kerman's the only one up in the cockpit. The other 2 are down in the living quarters. I gave them an extra Kerbal storage thing. I forget the actual name of it. But I did that for the factor of realism, assuming they would need lots of supplies, so that's where those are housed. And so if we need to, the Star Blazer actually has a capacity of 7 Kerbals, but we're only taking 3 today. And this is the view they had for months of their journey. It is the vast emptiness of space with nothing but the sun in sight. But now the real work begins. Our Duna encounters happen in quick succession with the 2 fuel stops that we launched before, just in case we need them. The first one, what we need to do with all of these things really, as you can see, they're going to encounter Duna shortly after each other. The 2 fuel stops encountered a few hours apart, with the Star Blazer coming about a day later, I believe. Is we have to lower our periapsis enough so that it dips way down into the thin atmosphere on Duna so that we can aerobrake, which is basically using the atmosphere to slow ourselves down enough so that we can maintain, or achieve rather, a good orbit without wasting tons and tons of fuel. So here we go. We are dipping down into the atmosphere of Duna, and you can see that is slowing us down considerably. And right about there, we achieve our orbit, and it's dropping quickly. You have to be very careful when aerobraking not to dip too low, where you crash into the planet. But if you don't go low enough, you won't achieve the orbit you're looking for. So, while we're waiting for the next one to come, what we have to do is when we get to the top of our orbit, make sure that next time we won't aerobrake. So we have to just extend our periapsis a little bit there, so we are safely out of the atmosphere and in orbit if we need to refuel. So there's the first refueling stop, and here comes the second one. And I launched 2 just because we had the launch window easily to Duna. And even if we don't need this mission, in future missions we might. So it's basically just a failsafe and a backup fuel source for any ships that could become stranded around Duna. So, doing the exact same thing, we are coming in for an attempted aerobrake, and we have to just lower the periapsis down nicely into the atmosphere, which we are doing right there. And right around 11,000 meters is where I chose to go for both of them, as we see Ike there in the background, Duna's moon. And so here we go. We are aerobraking through Duna's atmosphere, passing close by the planet and slowing down a lot. And there we go. We have our nice looking orbit there. This one's a much more equatorial orbit than the other one, although neither of them were really amazing orbits around the equator. Those are hard to get coming in from interplanetary space. But either way, they will work just fine for now. So again, once we get to our apoapsis, we have to just extend the periapsis so that we are out of the atmosphere. And then once we do that, we are ready for the star blazer. So we switch to the crew now, once again on EVA, taking their first looks at the tiny red dot that is Duna, as it first appeared in their field of view. So, after that, they all get back into the star blazer, and it is time for their work to begin. They have to do another long burn to get ready, and they will also be aerobraking through Duna's atmosphere, which is a lot more sketchy, I guess you could say, than it was with the other ships, because this one has a lander attached to the front, and aerobraking, if you come in too fast, can sometimes rip your ship apart. If it's too wobbly while you're going through the air. And it can also, if you go too low, like I said, you will slow down too much and crash into the planet. Neither of which is a good thing. So, as they're coming in, getting much closer, they decide to go on EVA one more time, snap a couple pictures to beam back for the newspapers, 'cause why not? And so there they are on EVA as they're coming in. They're all back, obviously, in the ship by the time they hit the atmosphere, but here they go, coming in to aerobrake on Duna. So here we go, we are dipping now down into the atmosphere near the southern ice cap of Duna, and we'll watch this slowly, hoping that we have hit it just right. We were extra careful. We didn't go down to 11,000 meters, we stayed right around 13 because we wanted to make sure that they didn't crash into the planet. If we needed to burn a little extra in retrograde, we could, because we have plenty of fuel for it. At this point in the mission, we realize we're probably not going to need the extra fuel from the fuel stops, but it's okay, like I said, they'll be there for future missions. But we would rather, on a manned mission especially, go too high and have to burn a little extra fuel than go too low and have them crash to their death on the surface of Duna, because that's just no good. So, here we go, and once we have established... Actually, no, wait, we don't establish our orbit yet. Rather, we get to our apoapsis, or at least nearby, and you can see our periapsis is down below 10,000 meters from the aerobraking. What we're going to want to do is get Donkis and Jebediah out into the lander, and for some reason there was a glitch where the camera kept moving around, which was making the EVA controls not work, basically. We'll say there was a malfunction in the EVA jetpacks. But eventually, after much longer than it should have taken, as you can see, the camera angle keeps changing, and it's very annoying. But after a while, we are able to get Donkis and Jebediah loaded into the lander that will, if everything goes well, take them to the surface of Duna. So there goes that, and the reason we have not stabilized our orbit yet is because we are going to let these guys go here, and then the lander will keep this orbit, so that it will either aerobrake or land on its next pass around Duna. Well, the Star Blazer will adjust its orbit so that it doesn't aerobrake or land after we detach the lander, if that made sense. I think it did. I think I said that right. Basically, the lander will keep this orbit. As you see here, we decouple. Now we can fix the ship's orbit so that it doesn't aerobrake. And so there you see the lander, and we'll activate the engine. and everything, and we make sure all the parachutes are working and all the controls are working, and everything appears to be. So we are ready to go, and we just have to do a little bit of work to get away from the Star Blazer so that it doesn't hit us when it does its burn. But Donkis and Jebediah are loaded and ready to go to Duna. However, over the time that they spent, the months that they spent in deep space, looking around at nothing basically but the ship, they noticed a design flaw in this lander. The parachutes don't go down to the main fuel tank. So they're worried, the Kerbal scientists are worried, that if they don't fire the engines, the parachutes could rip apart the lander. As you can see, there are parachutes on the cockpit and the RCS tank, but not on the main fuel tank. And that's a problem. If we are going too fast, basically, the parachutes will just rip apart at that point. And there's the random debris floating as we switch back to the Star Blazer. And so now the Star Blazer can correct its orbit, as you see it doing there. And Colin will remain up in space by himself for a while, observing Duna from orbit. But yeah, so basically what we have to do right now, we're just checking to make sure the parachutes are all deployed, so when we hit the low part of the atmosphere, they will deploy. And now we come in for aero braking or landing, depending on how much we slow down. Now, if you were paying attention there, what I did is I moved up the periapsis by doing a quick burn off camera to get it so that we will actually aero brake for sure one more time, because we didn't want to be coming in necessarily as quickly as we were. We wanted to slow down a little bit more so that when we have to burn to make sure that the thing doesn't get ripped apart, we can do that with less fuel. So we aero brake one more time, we take another orbit around Duna, and as you can see, we are now entering Duna's atmosphere for the second time, and this is the time that we will be landing on. So all systems are go, as we are down below 25,000 meters. Donkis and Jebediah are happy, and the eyes of the world are watching, or the eyes of Kerbin are watching. All of the Kerbals are hoping for a successful landing, because they don't want to see two of their greatest Kerbinauts killed. That would be very, very tragic. That was the downside of taking the best and brightest we had on this mission, is if they don't come back, we lose two of our best astronauts. But anyway, we were confident that they could pull it off. And so, here we go. We are slowing down considerably, and this is sped way up, by the way, this landing. So, by way up, I mean by like ×4, I think, it's sped up. So we are actually dropping towards the surface rather slowly, but we have lots and lots of lateral velocity. But as you can see there, we are going to land this time. Our trajectory is a landing one, as we are now down to 16,000 meters, and our landing legs are all deployed. Parachutes should deploy when they hit the thick part of the atmosphere. Basically, what we need to hope for is that it doesn't get ripped apart, and there is a very, very real possibility of that happening, by the way. This was not a good design for a lander, and these guys are going to have to do a heck of a job piloting it to make sure that doesn't happen. So, here we go back to real time now. We are going at about 800 meters per second, slightly below that, and we are at around 11,000 meters, 11 kilometers above sea level of Duna, so slightly less than 11,000 kilometers above the surface, but dropping quickly, now down to 10 kilometers, or right around there, and at about 740 meters per second right now, as we are dropping and the parachutes are getting ready to deploy. So, the first time the parachutes deploy right there, that's not what we're worried about. It's when they fully deploy. That's going to create a lot of tension on that midsection of the rocket and may rip it apart. And we really want to avoid that. But as you can see, the parachutes are slowing us down considerably. And we are now down to right around 500 meters per second at 6,500 meters above sea level, or above the surface. And now down to 5,500 meters and 400 meters per second. And the parachutes are gonna deploy at some point soon, so we want to slow ourselves down so engines are full thrust. And the danger with what we're doing now, with the engine burning, is that we aren't going to have enough fuel to get back up into orbit, because when this rocket was designed, it wasn't designed to have to burn any fuel on landing, and now it's going to have to burn a decent amount to make sure that it just survives the landing. And so here we go, and we got to keep the engine burning so that we're going rather slow when the parachutes do fully deploy, which should be coming soon. And this is the tensest moment of the mission. Everyone at Mission Control is nervous and hoping, and there it goes. It works. We can then kill the engines. Luckily, we were able to catch the problem, notice it, and figure that out on our final inspection. And so we were going slow enough, and we did have to use some fuel, but the parachutes are fully deployed. We are descending slowly towards the surface of Duna, and it looks like we have done it. We are going to put Jebediah and Donkis Kerman safely on the surface of Duna. Now, getting them back is going to be made just that much more complicated by the fact that we had to do this, and we are burning the engines again just to make sure landing is softer, because we didn't want to land quite as fast as we were going. So the engine will just be on a nice slow burn there, and the parachutes are also doing quite a bit of work, but this thing is fairly heavy for a lander. But there we go, we have touchdown, kill engines, and it did not tip over. So there it is, we have done it. Jebediah and Donkis breathe a sigh of relief, as does the entire Mission Control. And there is much cheering, and there is much rejoicing. Everyone is very happy. So, now it's time to extend the ladders and do what we're here for, to put kerbals on the surface of Duna. So Jebediah will be the first to take that glorious step onto another planet, as he climbs down the ladder and takes his first step ever onto the surface of Duna. There it is, the historic moment in the Kerbal civilization and the Kerbal space program, as he does a little bit of walking around, stretching his legs after a long time in that capsule there. But Jebediah and Donkis Kerman are now on Duna, and it's Donkis' turn to get out, climb down the ladder, and they will begin their scientific experiments and collecting of rock samples and whatnot, looking for life on Duna. And so there he goes, joining Jebediah, and there are our two great heroes, the brave Kerbals, who have survived their journey to Duna. And like I said, we'll be doing many scientific experiments, and then next episode we will hopefully have enough fuel to get them back up into orbit, and then dock them to the Star Blazer and hopefully return them back to Kerbin. So, as a wise use of their time, they stand perfectly still until daytime. But no, that was just a nice time lapse so that we could see Duna in daylight, and there they are. That is the picture sent home that will be on the front page of all the Kerbal newspapers. This has been iampeppino, sending Kerbals to Duna. Thank you for watching, and join me next time.